part of this war on the human psyche, the war on human emotional states, is that notice what they're targeting more than anything with their lockdowns. Anything that is fun, anything that allows people to chill out, anything that allows people to interact and have social discourse. So the bars, the restaurants, the cinemas, the concerts, the theatres, all these things, even the gyms, and all these places where people have fun and interact, what they call in a kind of totality, the hospitality industry. Why is it the hospitality industry is the one that's been most targeted, along with the entertainment industry, and indeed the health industry? Why? Because it's part of this psychological war. While they're battering you down with one hand, they're taking away the antidote to that with the other, increasing the psychological consequences of depression and loss of hope, loss of any idea that life could ever be fun again. Also, of course, sport. Sport not only in the sense of entertainment, but sport in terms of kids. For instance, having fun playing football, soccer, or any other sport. No, keep them locked away. Don't let them play soccer, that's fun. They'll get enjoyment, they'll get joy. We don't want that, we're trying to break them. So this is Biderman's chart of coercion. See if you recognize it. Number one, isolation. Deprives victim of all social support. And remember, the Biderman chart of coercion is how to break prisoners of war, to break them down so they become submissive and do whatever you want, right? And this is what's being played out in the population now. So here we go. Isolation deprives victim of all social support of their ability to resist. Develops an intense concern with self and the consequences for self. Makes victim dependent on the victimizer. So the more and more the economy is destroyed and independent livelihoods are destroyed by the tyrant authority, the more the victims of that become dependent on the tyrant authority. Complete solitary confinement, complete or partial isolation, group isolation are variants on this isolation method. Monopolization of perception fixes attention on immediate predicament. Don't talk about anything else. You turn on the radio, you turn on the television, it's all the same freaking thing. There's hardly any respite from it, particularly in the news programs, there is none. Eliminates information not in compliance with demands. I've not been subjected to that. This is what all the censorship's about. Eliminating information not in compliance with demands. This is why the fascists that own and run Twitter and Google and YouTube and Facebook, your Brins and Pages and Wachowskis and Zuckerbergs and Sandbergs and Dorseys, not that they really run them, they just front up for them. This is what they're doing, these fascists, that's what they are. Facilitating the imposition of fascism. And their role is to eliminate information not in compliance with demands. Punishes independence and or resistance. Look around you. Also part of the variant of monopolization of perception, physical isolation. Now, in this sense, isolating you from any information that questions the official narrative. It's perceptual isolation in this sense. So you only ever hear one thing. Restricted movement. Monotonous food is another one. That's coming. If we just go on taking it. Humiliation and degradation makes resistance more costly than compliance. I mean, that's where the big fines are for not complying. To make you comply because you fear the consequences of not complying. Animal level concerns, survival. Demeaning punishments, insults and taunts, denial of privacy. Exhaustion weakens mental and physical ability to resist. Threats creates anxiety and despair, outlines cost of non-compliance, and is also, as a variant of that, mysterious changes of treatment. This is why they keep changing the bloody rules. And people can, oh, well, what's going on? What's the rules now? This is why they're doing it. They're breaking down your psyche, breaking down your spirit, so you comply like the prisoners of war. Occasional indulgences, positive motivation for compliance, and this is another interesting one with occasional indulgences. They hinder adjustment to deprivation. See what the mind, the body does the same as well, but what the mind does, it can adjust to a situation. And it's not impacted upon it in the same way because it's basically adjusted to it. It's come to terms with it. So what they're doing here, well, if you do this, if we all pull together, then you might get this at the end of it. This is to break the adjustment to deprivation, to the situation, so that you break out of it and you have hope. And once you have hope, they then kick you back into the deprivation. And then you have to readjust to it again. Occasional favors, rewards for partial compliance, and promises. Oh, you go out and get tested, we're having a second lockdown in Britain and you might have Christmas. We know you won't, but we promise we'll do our best so you can have Christmas. Occasional indulgences. Demonstrating omnipotence suggests the futility of resistance to the prisoner. You're under our total control. You're in this prison cell, Mr. Prisoner, and anything that happens to you, we decide. You cannot resist because you've got nowhere to run. And you've got nowhere to go. So resistance is futile. So, because resistance is futile, you better just comply. Do what we tell you. Tell us what we want to know. And there is no other option, mate. Showing complete control over victim. Forcing trivial demands, develop a habit of compliance and enforcement of rules. Now, this is what I talked about a few minutes ago, about forcing trivial demands. Develops a habit of compliance. you get into, I mean, if you look at a human life, partly is a programming of habit of compliance. So you're born, and then you start the compliance to what your parents want. You then go to school, and the teacher now is enforcing the compliance. And so you do what they tell you, because there are consequences for not doing so. And you go on through your academic life, then you go into adult life, and now the boss is the teacher, and not doing what the boss says, there are consequences for it. And it breaks down people into this reflex action compliance to authority. Then you've got the government, you've got the police, and all this also telling you all the time what you must do, what you must not do, where you can go, where you can't go, what you can say now and what you can't say. And this is why the trivial demands are enforced upon people. The more trivial the demand, the greater the impact on compliance. Wherever you look at the techniques of individual mind control and breaking down of resistance, you are now seeing them played out on the entire population. And this is leading to a position whereby people become so compliant that they no longer literally have a mind of their own, or a perception of their own, or an opinion of their own. And if you think it's bad now, what's it going to be like for the kids and the grandkids as this goes on to full, total breaking down of any individuality? Anyone that complies with what the government tells them, that it's about enslavement and nothing else, about psychological programming and nothing else. Anyone that complies with that and doesn't say, no, I'm not doing it, is building, making a contribution to building the very fascist state that they and their children are going to have to live in. I can't think of many other definitions of insanity. Time to wake up to the reality of what we're facing. One of the biggest problems that people have, and I do understand it, is they can't grasp the scale of the sheer evil that is behind this. So because they have not experienced this evil directly, they are now, many don't even realize they are, but because they can't or haven't experienced it themselves in their own lives this far, they can't believe that it exists. It does. And we stand up now collectively and say no, or the consequences for ourselves, but even more for our kids, are absolutely unthinkable. And if we can't summon the courage to stand up for ourselves, then for God's sake, let's stand up for them.